The Ashford family's annual Christmas Gala was exactly as suffocating as I remembered. Crystal snowflakes hung from the vaulted ceiling of my uncle's estate in Rosedale, Toronto's most exclusive neighborhood, casting prismatic light across designer gowns and tailored tuxedos. The air was thick with expensive perfume and the particular brand of superiority that seemed to follow my relatives everywhere they went. I stood near the French windows overlooking the frozen garden, watching my cousins compete for attention with stories of their latest achievements. My simple navy dress, carefully chosen to help me blend into the background, felt like armor against their judgment. "Maya!" My Aunt Victoria's voice cut through the champagne-fueled chatter. "I almost didn't see you there, dear. Still working as a bookkeeper?" I took a small sip of sparkling wine, hiding my smile behind the glass. "Accountant, actually." "Oh." She raised a perfectly microbladed eyebrow. "Well, numbers have always been your thing, haven't they? So practical." The word hung in the air like an insult. Not everyone can be an entrepreneur like your cousin Brandon. Brandon, Victoria's golden child, launched into another story about his commercial real estate ventures. Just closed on another property in King West. The market's insane right now. Of course, you need capital to play in this league. My phone buzzed in my clutch. A message from my actual assistant. "Emergency board meeting tomorrow, 9 a.m. Ashford Properties requesting urgent financing discussion King West portfolio, critical." I scanned the message twice, realization dawning. Brandon's company was the one desperately seeking the $75 million loan package. The same financing my company had been reviewing for the past month. The same deal that required approval from Nexus Capital's CEO. My company. Tomorrow morning, my family would walk into a meeting expecting to charm their way into funding. Instead, they'd find themselves facing the bookkeeper they'd dismissed for the past 8 years. Except I wouldn't be bringing spreadsheets to review. I'd be sitting at the head of the table, deciding whether their company survived. "Everything all right, dear?" Aunt Victoria asked, noticing my expression. I finished my wine and gave her my brightest smile. "Perfect, actually. I should head home, though. Early meeting tomorrow." "Oh? Taking minutes for someone important?" "Something like that," I replied, already planning what I'd wear. Not navy this time. Something powerful. Something they'd never forget. The next morning, I stood in my private elevator, ascending to Nexus Capital's executive floor in the financial district. Gone was the simple navy dress from last night's gala. Today I wore a sharp crimson blazer over black trousers, a power color for a power move. My assistant, Jennifer, waited at the elevator doors with her tablet and a knowing smile. "The Ashford Properties team arrived 20 minutes early," she reported as we walked. "Brandon seems particularly anxious to meet Nexus's CEO. He's been asking every staff member if they know anything about you." "I'm sure he has." I checked my reflection in the glass wall overlooking Bay Street. "Perfect. Are they in the main boardroom?" "Yes, along with their CFO, Marcus Chen, and their lawyer, David Patel. Your Uncle Graham came as well, though he's not officially part of the presentation." "And my cousin Derek?" Jennifer's eyes sparkled with anticipation. "He insisted on handling the financial projections personally. Apparently, he told everyone at the Christmas party that he'd crush this presentation." I almost laughed. Derek had spent 15 minutes last night explaining to me why women couldn't understand complex real estate finance. "The numbers just don't click for them," he'd said, as if I hadn't been standing right there with a degree from Queen's Commerce. "Give me 2 minutes," I said, pausing outside the boardroom doors. "Then bring in the due diligence reports." I could hear voices through the heavy oak doors. Brandon's confident tone, Uncle Graham's authoritative laugh. Derek's smug commentary about how this CEO better understand Toronto's market dynamics. Taking a deep breath, I pushed the doors open. The conversation stopped abruptly. Brandon sat at one end of the long table, having apparently assumed the power position. Derek and Marcus flanked him, both in expensive suits that screamed family money. Uncle Graham perched nearby, checking his Rolex with practiced impatience. David, their lawyer, sat alone on the other side, looking uncomfortable. Finally, Aunt Victoria sighed. She'd apparently decided to attend after all. We've been waiting for coffee for. She stopped, really looking at me for the first time. Maya, what are you wearing? And why aren't you carrying refreshments? I walked calmly to the head of the table, the seat directly opposite Brandon. I don't serve coffee anymore, Aunt Victoria. In fact, I never really did. What is this? Uncle Graham demanded. Where is Nexus's CEO? We were promised a meeting with the actual decision-maker. You have one. I sat down, enjoying the confusion spreading across their faces. I am the CEO of Nexus Capital. I have been since I founded the company 8 years ago. The silence that followed was deafening. Derek's mouth opened and closed. Marcus dropped his pen. Aunt Victoria's perfectly maintained composure cracked like thin ice. Uncle Graham's face began turning an alarming shade of red. Brandon recovered first, his salesman instincts kicking in. This is absurd. You're a bookkeeper. You do tax returns for small businesses. No, I said calmly. That was a cover. A very effective one, apparently, since none of you ever looked past it. You were so convinced I couldn't be successful that you never noticed I already was. Jennifer chose that moment to enter with a stack of leather portfolios. She distributed them efficiently, then took her place standing behind my chair. These documents, I continued, outline the terms under which Nexus Capital will consider approving the $75 million financing package for Ashford Properties' King West portfolio. Consider approving? Derek sputtered. You can't be serious. This has to be some kind of elaborate joke. I pulled out my phone and projected Nexus's latest portfolio summary onto the wall screen. Nexus Capital currently manages $2.3 billion in real estate and venture investments across Canada. We have a 96% success rate in commercial development financing. Our approval is required for any major institutional backing of your King West project. I smiled at my stunned relatives. Does that look like a joke to you? This is impossible, Aunt Victoria whispered. You're nobody. You've always been nobody. That's exactly what you were meant to think. I turned to Marcus. Would you like to explain to my family why Ashford Properties chose to approach Nexus Capital for this financing? Marcus straightened in his chair, professional despite his obvious discomfort. Nexus's reputation in the Canadian commercial real estate market is unparalleled. When traditional banks declined our loan request due to concerns about our debt-to-equity ratio, Nexus was our best option for bridge financing. The banks declined? Uncle Graham looked like he might faint. Brandon, you said this was just about getting better terms. Concerns about debt ratio, I repeated, opening one of the portfolios. Let me be more specific. Ashford Properties attempted to acquire 3 properties in King West over the past 18 months. The Wellington Street Tower, outbid by a consortium, backed by Nexus. The King and Portland development financing pulled after structural issues we identified. The Fashion District conversion, mysteriously bought by a numbered company. I leaned forward. That numbered company? That was me too. You deliberately sabotaged our deals? Brandon's face had gone white. No. I prevented you from making catastrophic investments. The Wellington Tower had undisclosed environmental liabilities worth $12 million. The King and Portland site had foundation problems that would have cost $8 million to remediate. The Fashion District building? The previous owner was under investigation for fraud. You didn't do proper due diligence on any of them. I began listing properties on my fingers. Bloor Street acquisition last year, I outbid you. Queen West portfolio last spring, I provided better terms to the sellers. The Distillery District project, I helped them restructure to avoid your below-market offer. Uncle Graham's face had progressed from red to purple. You've been working against family? Against your own blood? I've been building my own business. One that helps create sustainable developments instead of over-leveraged speculation. The fact that it interfered with your plans was just due diligence. This is ridiculous, Derek declared, standing up. I'm calling our bank. They'll confirm this is all nonsense. Sit down, Derek. My voice carried an authority that made him freeze. You really should read those portfolios in front of you, the ones your firm spent weeks trying to secure this meeting over. I watched realization dawn on his face. That's right. The anonymous lead investor you've been pitching to for months. The one whose backing would unlock the rest of your financing. That was me the entire time. Jennifer stepped forward with another document. This is a summary of Nexus Capital's current position in Toronto's commercial real estate market and our available capital. You'll note that we're now in a position to finance the King West project outright if we choose. Without you, the room erupted in chaos. Aunt Victoria was practically hyperventilating. Marcus was frantically checking the numbers on his phone. Derek had collapsed back into his chair, looking shell-shocked. David, the lawyer, was speed-reading the portfolio with growing alarm. "This is blackmail," Uncle Graham growled. "No," I said quietly. "This is business. The kind you always said I'd never understand. The kind you told me I wasn't smart enough for. The kind you said required male instincts." I stood up, smoothing my blazer. "You have until 5 p.m. today to review the financing terms. They're very fair, considering your position. Standard institutional rates, reasonable covenants, and a restructuring plan that will actually make your project viable." I headed for the door, then paused. "Oh, and Aunt Victoria? That wine you served last night? The Niagara ice wine you said was too sophisticated for my palate? I own 15% of that vineyard. Bought it 3 years ago as part of a hospitality portfolio." I smiled. Turns out my salary does leave room for expensive tastes after all. The door closed behind me on their stunned faces. In my office, I finally allowed myself a moment to process what had just happened. 8 years of careful deception, of playing the invisible accountant, of watching my family dismiss me and underestimate me, had led to this single moment. Jennifer appeared with actual coffee, my favorite blend from a local roaster. Was it worth the wait? I thought about all the times I'd sat in their offices, listening to them talk about deals while treating me like furniture. Every family dinner where they'd asked about my little accounting practice with barely concealed pity. Every time Derek had mansplained financial concepts I'd mastered years ago. Every time Brandon had offered me a real job at his company, assuming I'd be grateful. Every single second. My phone buzzed. Messages already flooding in from family members who must have heard about the meeting. "Brandon, Maya, we need to talk. This is family. We can work something out." Derek, "Come on, cuz. You know we were just joking around. No hard feelings, right?" Aunt Victoria, "Darling, I think there's been some miscommunication. Let's have lunch and discuss this properly." I silenced the phone without responding. They'd have plenty of time to process their new reality. Right now, I had an empire to run. And for the first time in 8 years, I could finally do it without hiding who I really was. The next 72 hours were exactly what you'd expect when a family built on ego and assumptions suddenly discovers they're not at the top of the food chain anymore. The messages started immediately, but it was the phone calls that were most telling. Uncle Graham called first, his voice careful. "Maya, sweetheart, I think we got off on the wrong foot this morning. Your aunt and I would love to have you over for dinner. Just family. We can talk about this calmly." "We are talking calmly, Uncle Graham. You have until 5 p.m. to review the terms. That's 16 hours from now. I suggest you spend them wisely." "But Maya, this is family business. Literally. Your grandfather started Ashford Properties in 1968. This company is our legacy. You can't just—" "I'm not doing anything to the company. I'm offering to save it. Whether you accept that help is entirely up to you." Brandon tried a different approach, showing up at my office building at 3 p.m. Security called up, and I told them to send him away. He called from the lobby. "At least hear me out, Maya. Face to face." Against my better judgment, I agreed to 15 minutes in the lobby cafe. He looked exhausted, his usual polish dimmed. "I don't understand why you're doing this. Why hide everything? Why not just tell us?" "Tell you what, exactly? That I was building a company? Would you have believed me? Or would you have done what you've always done, patted me on the head and told me to stick to what I know?" He had the decency to look uncomfortable. "We might have been dismissive. But this? Secretly undermining our deals for years?" "I wasn't undermining you, Brandon. I was stopping you from making disastrous investments. The Wellington Tower alone would have bankrupted you. The environmental liabilities weren't just expensive, they were catastrophic. There's crown contamination on that site, dating back 80 years. How did you even know that? Because I do actual due diligence. You look at cap rates and potential rent rolls. I look at soil reports, structural engineering assessments, title searches going back decades. That's the difference between building a sustainable business and gambling with other people's money. Other people's money? His voice rose. It's family money. It's our inheritance. Exactly. And I'm trying to make sure there's still something left to inherit. I checked my watch. You have 2 hours to decide. The terms are generous. Standard institutional rates, a restructuring plan that actually works, and advisory services to help you avoid these mistakes in the future. Advisory services? You mean you'd be telling us how to run the company? I mean, I'd be helping you run it properly. But if you'd rather let your ego destroy 3 generations of work, that's your choice. He left without another word. At 4:47 p.m., Marcus Chen called. We're accepting the terms. All of them. Brandon signed off 15 minutes ago. I'd expected relief. Instead, I felt oddly hollow. I'll have Jennifer send over the closing documents. We can finalize everything by end of week. Maya? Marcus's voice was careful. For what it's worth, I always thought you were sharp. At the family dinners, the way you'd ask questions about our projects, you understood more than they realized. Thank you, Marcus. But I didn't say anything, and I'm sorry for that. After he hung up, I sat in my office watching the sun set over Lake Ontario, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Jennifer knocked softly. The press has picked up the story. Canadian Business wants an interview. So does the Globe and Mail. And... She hesitated. Your mother called. My mother, who'd divorced Uncle Graham's brother 15 years ago and moved to Vancouver, had always been on the periphery of the Ashford family drama. We talked every week, but I'd never told her the full extent of what I'd built. What did she say? She said, and I quote, I always knew my daughter was brilliant. Tell her to call me when she has a moment to breathe. I smiled. I'll call her tonight. The media coverage started the next morning. Secret CEO revealed how Maya Ashford built a $2, 3B real estate empire, while her family thought she was a bookkeeper. The headlines ranged from admiring to sensational, but they all focused on the same angle: the underestimated woman who'd outsmarted her entire family. Aunt Victoria tried to get ahead of the narrative, posting on Instagram about how proud the family has always been of Maya's entrepreneurial spirit. The post lasted 6 hours before someone leaked a video from last year's Christmas party, where she'd spent 10 minutes explaining to her book club friends why I'd never amount to anything in the real business world. The video went viral. She deleted her social media accounts by evening. Derek handled it worse. He called me directly, furious. You've humiliated this family. Do you know what people are saying? That we're fools. That we couldn't see what was right in front of us. You couldn't, I said simply. That's not my fault. That's yours. We trusted you. No, you dismissed me. There's a difference. Trust implies respect. You never respected me enough to consider I might be capable of more than you assumed. Brandon adapted the fastest. He called 3 days after the deal closed. I need your help. With what? Everything. You were right about the due diligence. I've been looking at our other projects, and there are problems. Serious problems. I'm in over my head, Maya. The admission must have cost him. Brandon had built his entire identity around being the successful entrepreneur, the golden child who'd taken grandfather's company into the modern era. Send me the files. I'll review them. Just like that? Your family, Brandon. And despite everything, I don't want to see you fail. I just wanted you to stop being reckless. 2 weeks after the meeting, Uncle Graham requested a formal sit-down, not at his house or my office, but at a neutral location, the Royal Ontario Museum's restaurant, overlooking the dinosaur galleries. He looked older than I remembered. The bluster was gone, replaced by something that looked almost like humility. I've been thinking about what you said. About due diligence. About sustainable business practices. He stirred his coffee. Your grandfather, my father, he built Ashford properties with careful planning. Every acquisition was studied for months. Every risk was calculated. Somewhere along the way, we lost that. You got caught up in the market, I said. Toronto's real estate boom made it easy to flip properties and make quick money. But that's not building, that's speculation. And you've been building. Yes. Why didn't you come to us? If you saw these problems, why work around us instead of with us? This was the question I'd been expecting. I tried, Uncle Graham. 7 years ago, when I first started Nexus, I brought you a proposal for a joint venture. Do you remember what you said? He shook his head slowly. You said, Maya, honey, you're very good with numbers, but this is big boy business. Why don't you focus on your accounting practice and leave the real investments to people who understand the market? His face fell. I said that? Word for word. In your office. With Brandon and Derek sitting right there, nodding along. And that's when you decided to prove you wrong? Yes. But more than that, to prove to myself that I could do it, that I was capable of more than you'd decided I was worth. We sat in silence for a moment, watching families move through the museum below. I'm sorry, he finally said, for underestimating you, for dismissing your abilities, for making you feel like you had to hide your success. I didn't have to hide it. I chose to, because watching you all confidently make mistake after mistake, never once considering that the quiet woman in the corner might see things you didn't, that taught me more about business than any MBA program ever could. And what did it teach you? That success isn't about being the loudest voice in the room. It's about being the most prepared, the most diligent, the most willing to do the unglamorous work that everyone else overlooks. He nodded slowly. Your grandfather used to say something similar. Boring is profitable. He was right. Will you? He hesitated. Will you work with us? Really work with us? Not as the family bookkeeper, but as a partner? I already am. The financing deal makes me your largest external stakeholder. I have board seats and advisory rights. The question is whether you'll actually listen to my advice. We'll listen. I'll make sure of it. 6 months later, the transformation was remarkable. Ashford Properties had restructured completely. Brandon was still CEO, but he'd brought in a new CFO, a woman, notably who shared my philosophy on due diligence. Derek had left the company, moving to Calgary for a fresh start. Uncle Graham had stepped back to Chairman Emeritus, giving Brandon real authority while providing mentorship. The King West project broke ground in April, on time and on budget. By July, they'd pre-leased 60% of the commercial space, at rates 15% above projections. More importantly, they'd started turning down deals. Bad deals, risky deals, the kind of deals they would have jumped at 18 months ago. You've changed them, Jennifer observed one morning, reading the latest project proposal from Ashford Properties. This is actually good. Conservative, properly researched, financially sound. They changed themselves. I just gave them a reason to. My phone rang. Mom, calling from Vancouver. Hi, sweetie. Just checking in. How's the Empire? I laughed. Exhausting, but good. I saw the Financial Post article about the King West project. They mentioned you as the guiding force behind Ashford Properties' turnaround. Your father would have been proud. My father, who died when I was 15, had been the opposite of the Ashford men. Quiet, thoughtful, methodical. He'd been an accountant, too, for a small firm in Scarborough. The family had always looked down on him for his lack of ambition. Dad taught me that there's no shame in doing things properly. Even if it takes longer. Even if it's not flashy. He did, and you've honored that better than anyone. After we hung up, I pulled out an old photo I kept in my desk drawer. My father and I at my Queen's graduation, both of us beaming. He'd been so proud when I'd graduated top of my class. Boring is profitable, Dad, I whispered. You were right about that, too. That evening, I attended the official groundbreaking ceremony for the King West project. Brandon insisted I be there, despite my preference for staying behind the scenes. "You're not hiding anymore, remember?" he'd said. "Besides, this project exists because of you. You should see it come to life." The ceremony was small, just key stakeholders, the construction team, and a few local councilors. As I watched Brandon give a speech about sustainable development and community partnership, I felt something I hadn't expected: pride. Not just in what I'd built, but in what they were becoming. After the ceremony, Brandon pulled me aside. "Thank you for not giving up on us. You could have just let us fail and bought the company for pennies. Instead, you saved us." "I didn't save you. I gave you the tools to save yourselves. That's an important distinction." "Is it?" "Yes. Because now when you succeed, it's yours. You earned it. You can't build real confidence on someone else's work." He nodded thoughtfully. "Derek called me last week. From Calgary." "Yeah?" He wanted advice. Not about business, about humility. He said, "Watching you run circles around all of us while we thought you were nobody." It broke something in him, but in a good way. He's rebuilding himself from scratch, taking courses, working for someone else instead of expecting to be handed a position. That's good. Derek has potential. He just needed to get past his ego. We all did. Brandon looked at the construction site, already being fenced off for Monday's work. "You know what the strangest part is? I'm happier now, running the company properly, making sustainable decisions, building something real instead of just flipping properties for quick cash. It feels better, more meaningful." "That's because it is meaningful. You're creating spaces people will work in, live in, build their own dreams in. That matters more than quarterly returns." As the sun set over Toronto's skyline, painting the construction site in golden light, I realized that this moment right here, was what I'd been building toward all along. Not revenge, not vindication, not even recognition, but transformation, redemption, growth. The best revenge isn't proving people wrong, it's helping them become better. And that's something worth building in silence, until the moment you can reveal it matters most. Looking back now, there are 3 lessons I'd share with anyone who's ever been underestimated. First, being underestimated is a gift. While everyone's watching the loud voices in the room, you're free to build something real. Use that invisibility. Embrace it. Let people dismiss you while you outwork them in silence. Second, success isn't about proving people wrong, it's about proving yourself right. I didn't build Nexus Capital to show my family they were mistaken about me. I built it because I knew what I was capable of, and I refused to let their limitations become mine. And finally, the most powerful thing you can do after proving everyone wrong isn't to gloat, it's to help them grow. Real strength isn't just about being right. It's about using your success to lift others up, even especially the ones who doubted you. Because at the end of the day, we're all just trying to build something that matters. And that's easier to do when we work together instead of against each other. My family underestimated me for years, but I didn't let that define me. I let it fuel me. And when they finally saw what I'd built, I didn't just prove them wrong. I gave them a chance to be part of something better. That's not revenge. That's revolution.